Hi, Tom.
Hello. How are you? How's Dan and Sam? Should I make sure I call you Daniel so we just make it more official? Dan and Sam is just too much fun for me.
Wait, do you say that on your own?
Like, only when I think about the Endless Appreciations podcast. I think it's the Dan and Sam show or the Sam and Dan show. Like, it's just more fun.
The only person that calls me Dan is my dad, and he only does it when he's talking about me around me to other people. So that always weirds me out. You're sounding like my father. Thomas, my father.
You've always struck me as a Daniel. I've never felt the. But
only right, time I've. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
It has a ring to it. The Dan and Sam
show. Anyway, hi everyone. This is Endless Appreciation. I'm Daniel. You can tell by the cheery sound of my voice. We have a special guest with us being Sam and myself. Sam is he's going to sound like himself, and you're going to notice a much deeper voice this afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you're listening. Podcasts don't have time. Say hi to Tom Watson, everyone. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Daniel. How's it going?
Thanks for being here.
Okay. Happy to be here. So happy to be here.
Where are you streaming in from?
I'm in Amsterdam.
Wonderful.
So here we have our class co-founder, Tom, and I can't keep it's hard for me to get out of that radio voice once I start. And
I was going to say, what are you doing? I think it has something. You have had a calmer, more soothing, gentler voice since moving to Baltimore, which is interesting.
I'm not moving, therefore I'm less stressed and I'm more at zen with myself.
I see. Okay.
You know,
maybe it's just a different podcast environment as well. Like contextually now, you have a different. I don't know. Maybe you just simply change the volume levels in your
it's
in your
just
relocation.
A different microphone. Nothing has changed. I'm just using a different mic. So enough about us. Let's talk about Tom. So we earlier this week. Last week, at the time this comes out, we released a deep dive into how we designed appreciations, the product feature, not the podcast. Although we can't talk about how we designed the podcast art because I made something bad and Tom made it good. That
would be interesting.
That's actually it. That's the whole story. I made something bad, Tom made it good. So we wanted to have Tom on to talk about, social networks, designing a calm and earnest internet instead of an ad-fueled hellscape. Unfortunately, Tom has the experience doing both. So, Tom, for those of us that don't know, such as Sam, I don't think Sam knows, do your 90-second background.
We'll start at Facebook because why not? We'll go super deep. I started at Facebook in 2009. So let's orient 2009 for everyone. The iPhone had been out for a year and a half. Yeah. Everyone that I worked with at Facebook had company Blackberries, and I was hired as the first designer for mobile. So I was responsible for the iPhone app, which was very nascent at the time. It had just recently gone from touch.facebook.com to an actual app. Then I ended up being responsible for designing a lot of features that you've used at Facebook, but that sort of was my foray heavily into social networking. So I was there from 2009 to 2013. And then from 2013 to 2018, I designed Pinterest. So I was one of the first designers at Pinterest and sort of focused on that. I did a lot of systems work there. So I led a team to design all the what they call design systems, so the buttons and the interface elements that go into designing the product. Think of it as building the Legos that you then use to build the product. So I did a lot of that for about 5 years, and then I moved to Amsterdam and headed up a company called Framers. I was the director of product for them for about a year, and then I left, and shortly after started Glass about a year later. That's my quick version.
A fun note would be that at Framer, you met engineering co-founder Stefan.
I did, yes.
Whose last name I always forget how to pronounce, so I just go with Stefan. Hi, Stefan. Sorry. That's my bad. So, so Tom and I met when he left Facebook. When he left Facebook, he left San Francisco and moved back to Portland, and a mutual friend of ours introduced us at a happy hour, and I immediately picked a fight with him about something about location software. It was like the day that Foursquare broke out Swarm into its own app, and I had very strong opinions about it. And so I fought with a tall stranger at a bar. And then at the end of our argument, I asked, "Well, you seem to know a lot about location stuff. What do you do? What have you done? That was really good." And Tom answered,
"Yeah, so I designed places for Facebook, so all the location services stuff during that time."
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how Tom and I met, and here we are, nearly a decade later. Oh God, are we almost at a decade now?
Yeah, I think it is this year, since I left in 2013. I think I met you sometime then, so we're just about at a decade now. My quip on that meeting of Daniel was, I like people who argue well and are really combative, even if I don't think I agreed with much of his opinions on the stuff, but
that sounds right.
I was very into, I like smart people who are willing to argue, and I think I told him, you argue like people who work at Facebook, which I think he took offense to, but I think that was a good thing. So yeah.
Now it's just anytime we're arguing and I say something a little too much, he's like, "Man, you're really working at Facebook today. It's rough." So
I'm loving the veil being lifted here on the dynamics between 2/3 of Glass.
We're a happy throuple.
And you guys, was it from the beginning that you sort of like had the idea for Glass and kind of built everything remotely, or did you ever have like a period of time where things were done in the room?
I started wanting to work on Glass, I would say 2012. So I was still at Facebook. Instagram had recently been purchased by Facebook, and I was sort of concerned with the future of where photographers would be able to work on and like function long term. I knew it wasn't going to happen immediately or overnight, but I didn't envision Kevin and Mike, the co-founders of Instagram, being able to sort of resist the overall like shift that would happen through the company and where Mark would take things. And so I really wanted to build something different, very away from the venture capital backed fueled environment. I have good friends who had founded large companies and been part of that, and I didn't see that as maybe a way to happiness or success in my life. It wasn't what I wanted to use to define it. And so I wanted to create some sort of alternative. And so I started designing the early what was Glass back in 2013, like shortly after I left Facebook. And
just
before
a
I ended
side project, passion thing for yourself.
100%. Yeah, and then a good friend of mine asked if I would be interested in working at Pinterest, and I ended up deciding to take him up on it. And so what I had called, I think, Lens at the time, it has had many names, but just took a back seat. And then I met a person in Portland who got quite excited about it. And we were actually two different people who I sort of, when I was living there, tried to get them fired up. Not just Daniel, but other people. And it didn't really go anywhere. Like we did some work, we pushed it, we started a Slack channel, and it just sort of ultimately died. And then I ended up going to Framer, and I met Stefan, and he shared a much more like connected passion. And I think the bigger passion for it was not, I mean, Glass is, we're big photography fans and wanting to build something for photographers. I don't want to diminish that, but the big like passion that we had towards it was that we could build a sustainable business, and it's something that would really ultimately be both fulfilling for us, but be sustainable, be consistent, and so that helped.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems with my skill set is my skill set doesn't do much until about 6 weeks before launch. Right, like I'm helpful with product stuff. I'm a joy to have around, but there's not much for a community and marketing manager to do when there is nothing to market and no community to manage. And so, like, me being fired up about it, right? So, like, when we met, we went to lunch, and he told me about the idea of Glass 10 years ago. And I was like, that sounds really cool. I told him about a really dumb, failed magazine idea that I had that I'm going to try to bring back one day at Glass, because, we can.
Very interesting.
One day. Yeah, you heard it here first. We're getting into publishing, everybody. And, you know, like, Tom told me about the idea. Name was bad back then. It was Lens something. It wasn't just Lens. There was like an added word, because that was the year of added. I don't remember. I hated it. I hated every name for Glass, including Glass, which is I was wrong about that. I can.
What, you didn't like the name Glass to start?
No.
Oh, it's so great.
Let me tell you why. This June, we will see if my greatest fear is realized or not, because Apple's AR, VR goggles, I'm not calling them glasses,
I've heard rumors that they're literally like ski goggles. So
yeah, so
let's hope they name them eye goggle instead of Apple Glass.
The rumored name for a very long time has been Glass, and I was like, I don't want to build a brand and then have to change it later. We need a different name. And Tom was like, but this is the best name we have, and it's good. And I was like, I hear you. I hate it.
When was the last time an internet rumor about an Apple product name was actually accurate? I don't think I've ever seen that. So it's actually maybe working in your favor that everybody's calling it Apple Glass or something.
I also believe that Google Glass really made it so that they wouldn't ever want to do it. That was my bet, that there was just obviously we're building a very different product in an entirely different space. So and it's also nice because the name being so generic isn't like trademarkable, or so there's ups and downsides to that, but it allows us to really own it, and it has a great URL, glass.photo. So
it has a good URL.
It is. They'll probably name it just Apple Glasses, so maybe that'll be.
That's not far enough.
It's not far enough away. Oh, okay. Well.
No, we need something different. We need the last name I saw was iReality or Reality Glass. I was like, I hate that too. Anyway, no negativity towards Apple products. Phil, you're gonna get on the show. We love you, buddy. Once Tom listens. Tom starts every episode, Sam, but he doesn't finish every episode. He's got a lot of podcasts.
What?
He's got a lot.
That's okay. I do try to listen to it. I have 2 young, wonderful children, and my life gets eaten up, and I have limited podcast time. But I have started every episode, and I've listened quite through. I listened to the most recent one, and I heard that Daniel was trying to get me to lobby to add the intro music to fade in instead of just the hard cut.
I can try that this episode.
I would appreciate that. That would be great.
Okay. I like it. It's so funny. It's like just a little.
It's grown on me. I have to say, it has grown on me. There's a hard stop, but I was like, whoa, there it is. All right. I love the intro music, though. Great work on that, Sam.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I typically, my problem with intro music or any type of production quality in a podcast is it's fun to set the tone for the first few times you hear it, but eventually you're just like, okay, get to the, like, for me, I'm just like, skip this. I've heard it, 20 times.
It's nice and short, though. It's nice and short, yours. It's quick, it's punchy, it's great. Yeah.
You wouldn't maybe know then at the end, once you get to the end, it's the full minute and a half track. So it's.
See, I'm feeling guilty now that I haven't gotten to the end and heard the minute and a half track. But
we won't hold it against you. So the the iterations of Glass have been going on for years, but then it ended up being a pandemic app. effectively, right? Like you met Stefan at Framer in 2018, right?
Yes, 2018 we met. 2019, end of 2019, so it was actually October 2019 that we started Glass sort of officially, but it was, it was very side project. We were all kind of working on it casually. And then, of course, the pandemic in March really accelerated things because everyone was home a lot. And
Of course.
Stefan was working on it on the side, nights and weekends. And I had client work, but I was doing it on the side as well. And so it really lended ourselves to having everyone was stuck in home with a lot more free time. And I think that's why Glass was able to get a lot farther than sometimes side projects will do. Also, as it's been a decade. I really wanted to see this product exist in the world. So I think just determination. I have a quip about this where we have one standing meeting that we have done almost every week now for nearly 3 years. So it's Wednesday. It's at 5 o'clock here in Amsterdam. The time has moved around a little bit, but that one check-in is the only meeting we have as a company. But it keeps everybody accountable, keeps us moving, and that momentum is so critical to projects like this. You just have to, I do all the boring stuff at the company, right? Like the Notion doc, the keeping I do the taxes.
Oh,
I don't want to talk about the taxes. It's been a whole thing this year.
I can't imagine. Ooh.
Yeah, there's just a lot of the logistics that come into running Glass that are not as exciting or sexy as appreciations work or designing the new features that we're all excited about. That's my favorite time to work on Glass.
We all have our things that we procrastinate the work that we need to be doing with the work that we want to be doing that is still effective, right? So not this feature, but the one after that comes out, which I can't say literally anything about. Secret forever. Is Stefan's procrastination project when he's been needing to do something in our onboarding flow or our automated emails and stuff like that. Whenever he's wanted to procrastinate on that, he's been working on this feature and then had a breakthrough, and now it's it's time to go. And so now we've reprioritized our roadmap to fit this feature in. So we have a version of that was endless appreciations, right? We need to find another channel. We have another thing that we need to do a little bit more outward facing marketing. What can we do? I don't know. So feeling it out, talking to other people, being ooh, and then finding Sam. Hello, Sam. And, here we are. Right. And
yeah. I'm trying to think back other than I know my discovery was through originally through Daring Fireball. John Gruber had a write-up about it, and I listened
thanks, Gruber.
Yeah, I sound like such a fanboy. I don't know how many times I've brought him up. It's at least once
4
per episode.
This is just 4 times that you've brought up John Gruber.
But he's got a good eye for linking to interesting projects that people are working on. Once I actually had it installed, what I loved was just it's a subtle thing that I think a lot of people had forgotten about since the days of Flickr, but just simply the presentation of the EXIF data, if it existed in the file that you upload, was so beautiful and elegant. And I hadn't thought about that. I used to scrub the EXIF data because I didn't want people to be able to take a deep dive on a blog post image of maybe how I maybe start to reverse engineer my editing or something like that. But I forgot that one of my earliest experiences once I started to get really passionate about photography was walking around a museum, and a bunch of, I don't know if they were local or maybe student photographers, had photos, prints on display, and they had all the basic EXIF data underneath. And the realization that it kind of gave me a glimpse into what their mindset was, conditionally about what they're capturing, was really fascinating, endlessly fascinating for me. And having that back, it was something that used to occur a lot on Flickr. And to my knowledge, that was the last big sort of commercial mainstream place that was ever really presented. Maybe SmugMug is also similar experience. But
it makes me very happy to hear you say that. I'm not sure. There's definitely some good value in EXIF data. The biggest reason to show it, and the reason we wanted there, was to signal to people that this was a space for photography and for photographers, and it was a pretty easy way to build that. Like we could show that data by just reading the EXIF data, the photos you uploaded, quite quickly. We'd love to do more with that in the future, but that one bit was really, that was important to us. Like it made a lot of sense. In the future, I talk about this idea of like view source of a photo. There's so much that goes into the creation of a photo, and if people are willing to share it, I'd love to offer more tools to photographers that lets you express how something was created. We have some incredible members. You included that. We'd love to see. I'd love to know more behind their process, and so those are anything from like multiple photos in a post, so you could tell more of a story around it. There's a whole bunch of, we have a member, Roy Handy, who does just incredible like almost graphical stuff he'll put on top of the photos that it almost makes things look like magazine shoots or whatnot, and like a magazine cover, not a magazine shoot. But I'd love him to be able to explain it more. And right now the tools are YouTube videos, which are good, but they do take time and to like scrub through and to figure out. I think there could be much more interesting and compelling ways to show that side of it and how photos made.
I've always been so surprised that YouTube took off as a place for photographers to talk about their work, because for me, and this is maybe just a Sam thing, but there's nothing more tedious than having to watch like a 20-minute YouTube video about how a photo was made. Like I want to see it in an article, maybe with some comparison photos where I can I control how long I'm looking at the frame versus the person in editing with the video saying, here's the photo, and then I see it for 2 seconds, or I have to physically pause it to like really take it in, and then they immediately cut to the next whatever. It works. Obviously people like it, but I think it's a little bit more, I don't want to say it's a trick, but I feel like most of the YouTube photographers I know, and there's plenty of incredibly good ones, obviously, but most that I observe, not that I know them personally, are actually excellent videographers, like storytellers through video. They just happen to choose photography as their niche. And when you really look at their core photography, maybe it's not just the standalone images, but they actually don't really even have much of a photography business. It's all put into this niche in YouTube videos. And something that's what was compelling to me about Glass, the captioning on an iPad was such a nice little place to type. I mean, I know I went a little extreme and it's super long. I don't think you intended it for long form posts, but I found it really nice.
But here you are writing 1,500 word captions because you had an extra pot of coffee and oops, here we are.
I mean, I love seeing it. It's been great to consume it. I'm pretty active in the community. I love seeing all of it. I knew early on, this wasn't my first thing I had built for photographers. I had built other products. That's where my skill set really is designing and building products. And I love being an amateur photographer, and I just love the community. Years ago, and this was before I went to work at Facebook, I made a service that was called Level and Tap, and you could the idea was for photographers to create prints, and it imported the stuff from Flickr, and then you could sell your prints online. And it was definitely baling wire and string sort of engineering effort to make this all connect up. This was very much like Web 2.0 APIs are everywhere days, but I just loved the community and the people involved in photography, and just loved being around it and loved building products for them. There's a whole other side of this, which is just Daniel loves to talk about, where he talks about like the advertising hellscape of Instagram and others, but like
so bad.
Creating an alternative there to where social media is really important to me too. But I chose photographers and photography as the niche that I felt like was the one I was most interested into, but like to create a different type of narrative around social networking or social in general. I often think of Glass as an interest-based community, right? Like it's a bunch of people getting together because they're really passionate about a particular subject. My wife is a active user of Ravelry, which is it's a social network specifically for knitters, and they're really into knitting. And so I think that there are like a much like an older term, long tail of these sorts of networks that could exist, and these sorts of communities that could exist online. And so trying to build one of those is really important. Sometimes they get huge. Facebook was obviously started by college dorms and kids, and so that was easily forgotten now that it's many billions of users. And like the success of Pinterest was fueled by Midwest in the United States mommy bloggers, and that sort of like catapulted it into a big wide stream thing. And some of them do that, some of them don't. And I wasn't trying to build one that does catapult and pivot and grow with huge venture capital money with this group of thing, but instead really focused on photographers and sort of that niche for the long term. And I think we can build a very sustainable business by doing it that.
Definitely.
One of the things that Sam was talking about with like the YouTube photographers being like really great videographers, but sometimes not incredible photographers, is kind of one of the things I really love about Glass, because Glass is just about taking a photo. You don't have to become a videographer. You don't have to become a dancer. You don't have to learn how to like mix your music to match your video beats to then hopefully get picked up by an algorithm so someone sees your goddamn photo. You just show it to them and they say, hey, I love that. Or this could be better. What'd you do here? Or right, like, and you don't have to have 900 ads shouted in your face. And,
I discovered a new place today where I had never seen ads before. I was looking at somebody's specific profile and like scrolling through their feed, of their grid. And there was an ad in between, like every 3 photos on the ground. I was like, what? Pretty soon they're going to start putting ads. If you do like a carousel post of 10 images, they're going to throw an ad in between. I guarantee it. They're going to throw an ad.
This is a thing that Tom and I talk about a lot, because we are as a brand and as a company and kind of as people, more so Tom than me, positive, right? Like I'm a known realist and pessimist about a lot of things, but like directionally positive, right? Like I think things are terrible and that we can bend them the correct way, right? That like we can put forth a lot of effort and things can get better, right? But when we're talking about like how we talk about, like Instagram, when we just describe what it does to you, right? Like how it affects your brain, or how you get addicted to, surface level dopamine, or how it gives teens eating disorders, or how, like all of these bad things that it does, that there are like scientific studies to prove. When you are just accurately describing the platform, it sounds like you're being like opposition, political level, like dirty laundry airing. And that's really hard to, like, I don't know how to talk about Instagram or the internet as a whole without mentioning the damage that it's currently doing to us, while also highlighting that like you don't have to feel this way, right? Like you can delete apps from your phone, you can shift things, and it's hard, right? Like I have an Instagram addiction too, right? Like I am certain it is my most used app, and part of that is because I use Glass on the web, and so it's not going to show up on this, because Glass would be my most used app. But like, then it would still be number 2, right? Like I'm not proud of that either. I haven't deleted it either, right? Like I know it's that same trade-off of like, all my friends are there, so I talk to my friends there, even though they're putting ads between our DMs, right? Like,
yeah, seriously. As a business account, like, category of profile, I can't tell you how it's just a constant little area of notifications wherever I am in the app, like, oh, you should boost this post and get more people messaging you. I'm like, that's the last thing I want. What are you doing? I don't want more messages. I want people to go to my actual website and fill out my contact form. I don't want to use a lead form that you control. Anyway, we can complain all day, but one of the things I actually had a question about was, Daniel and I have talked, I think, through a couple episodes that have been publicly released through sort of the old internet versus the new internet. And for me, I had sort of just in the past few months, because I had a huge saturation of in-person photography conferences I was at, that my most valued, long-standing, meaningful internet relationships, where I ended up meeting these people in person and like having sustained real relationships with them, came from the old era of internet, where it really demanded something of me to go check in on this Flickr group and see if there were any new posts. And I always had this like subroutine running in the back of my head saying, oh yeah, I need to actively go like see what's happening. So they became sort of an ever-present part of who I was, versus sort of just relying on Flickr at the time to surface what was going to be the most interesting thing that day, and sort of getting spread so thin with that information now in Instagram, using that type of methodology, that I don't really have those deep and meaningful relationships. Maybe that's also because it was a certain time in my life in my 20s. I don't know exactly what's going on, but is there any sort of inspiration that you look at from an older era of internet like Flickr or any place else that kind of did it right and sort of got acquired and died off that you aspire to? Or are you trying to like really carve out your own discovery of what Glass should be?
I mean, I think we've talked before on different podcasts about how Flickr was an inspiration for us, and sort of what those connections built. Like there's a member on Glass who I am extremely close friends with. We celebrate Christmas with her, and I met her on Flickr. Like it's a place in which I did build some very meaningful friendships, and I think people can and still do on the internet. And to get back to Daniel's, I'm optimistic about it. I didn't want to. I do think the internet and social on the internet can be a really great thing for people, and can really connect people across lots of different distances, especially if you're, someone who isn't necessarily the same or part of an in-group in a particular geographical region. You can connect and find other people from far distances and then meet. And I think the interests that you share and hold can be really meaningful and powerful there. And so I'm not sure if I'm directly answering the question about did I look for inspiration. Sure, I think there was some really great stuff that happened in the early internet because it wasn't quite so commercialized yet, and it wasn't quite so treating each individual eyeball as an ad dollar. That was really powerful. But I really still believe in some of that like connection that people can make. We want to do, I think Daniel's planning to do, even recently, I don't want to give too much away on the podcast, but some meetups.
Give it all away.
In-person meetups.
We can give that away.
And in-person meetups, I think are really powerful. And, you have to do them well and carefully and, make sure everyone is treated with respect and care. But it's really powerful. And I still have some really close and good friends because of those sorts of things that happened through Flickr. And I really loved it.
Right. Like I do not say this hyperbolically. I am alive today because I had the internet as a queer teen in Idaho. Right. Like it is the only thing that like made me feel like I had hope and a home was the internet, which is why it's also so hard to exist on the current internet that we have, right? That we have allowed to be taken from us and be defined by seven large internet conglomerations and media companies, because it was and still can be and still is in the right spot, like a really magical life-saving place. And, I don't think that that's lost, right? Like my best friend has a dumb saying that he says to me all the time as a joke that has accidentally kind of become a little bit of a mantra for Tom and I in our DMs when we're being grumpy about something, of like positive vibes, positive results, which is a wonderful thing for white men to say. But like there's like this, for us to try to do this is not like an easy thing, right? Like this is, like practically this is a very hard thing.
I love that. It feels like you are trying to. There's just three of you, right? Maybe you outsource a few things here and there, but it seems so like you're trying to just grind with as efficient company product that you're building as possible, which makes it inherently more like meaningful and personal, at least for me, knowing that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a sort of very small group. This wasn't as possible a decade ago either. Like when I started trying to do this, technology has enabled a lot of things. Like we have a feature coming right now that wasn't possible.
Yeah, was AWS even a product? Was Azure around and like?
And the early days of all that stuff, right? Like so, and some of these features that we've been wanting to release, technology makes them more plausible and feasible. And I'm going to go back to some of the early stuff I was talking about with Facebook. When I started in 2009, I joined very idealistically. That was sort of an era of the internet changing, like Arab Spring, big democracy changes were coming. Like everything, like making the world more open and connected was Facebook's mission. And I really sort of bought into that. And one thing that the internet had at that time, and still does to this day, but that we thought would solve it, which was Facebook's mission around one person, one account. And so it was like you put your authentic identity and self online and people will behave in much better and more positive ways. There's a friend of mine, his name's Dave Morin, and we had this big argument. It was similar to when I met Daniel, kind of, I guess, about this, and like really got passionate about it. It was like my third day at Facebook. It was good times, very idealistic, heady times, and that was sort of the discussion around it. And like, should one company own identity online? Like that sounded terrible to me, but I was working at the company at the time, right? And so, but I also, if you can't, there wasn't a good alternative, and Facebook did drive a lot of that. The problem is that it turned out if you attach people's identity to who they are, they still will be very mean online or not behave well. That doesn't really stop them from it. I think it's the lack of connection you make with a person in real life that you just don't see there's no trait in empathy between each other. And I would say the assumption that we have with Glass, and it's turned out to be a pretty good assumption, was that if we made a paid for service, people needed to commit. So we leveraged capitalism. This will probably irk Daniel, like that you pay to do this. You're more committed to the community. You're more committed to sort of the general overall mission that we're trying to do and create it. And I've been thankful that like we haven't had to spend an exorbitant amount of time policing the platform or like getting rid of bad actors. Whereas like that was a huge team at Facebook when I started. There was over 350 people. Like over half the company was on the community support group. So it was big. I mean, there was 200 million users of Facebook when I started. So which sounds so small now, but that was people were using it at the time, which was huge. And there was only like 500 people at the company. So yeah, it was a lot to manage.
That tracks with a few photography companies I know the founders of, like more of the tools that photographers can use for a client experience. And they tell me they're like how big their company is, and that like half the staff or employees are customer service type people. I'm like, that's crazy.
As the customer service and trust and safety and support human being, most times it's my least favorite thing. That's the thing I procrastinate on the most. It's just, but the reason is because that's your only thing that doesn't scale. Like Tom's designs scale, whether we have 50,000 members or 500,000 members or 5 million members, right? Like we have to, there are different things that Tom will take into account, right? Like our, a good example of that would be like our community tab, the Explore tab that has the members and highlights and categories. That was when it was originally designed, it was just a list of people because it was originally designed for 100 to 500 people, right? Like it was for our beta, and in the beta test, there was nothing wrong with it. It was easily navigatable and fine. And then we launched, and 25,000 people came through the door in a week, and it was broken, right? So like the way you design things changes, but the design work itself scales. But sending an email and solving someone's problem is not a scalable problem. It's
okay.
A
You just
one-to-one.
train a little AI bot now, and it'll be fine.
When I was at Facebook, that was one of the first things that happened, and it's progressed to this day that there was a hard hiring freeze on support people, and it was all about focus on automation. It wasn't really AI at that time. It was just like, okay, tools and services to route, support tickets. And it's been a forever complaint, when you have an issue with a social network, you write in and they've closed your account or they've canceled your account and you can't get access to it. And that's just the scale is so massive. It's a little mind-boggling.
It was about a year ago. No insight whatsoever into why, but I got a message. Actually, somebody else sent me an email saying, "Hey, did you block me, or what happened to your Instagram account?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I tried to log in, couldn't get access. I was like, "Oh God, I've been hacked." But then I did discover the email that Instagram sent that just said, you violated something, and we're not going to tell you what it is, but see ya. I was like, what is happening? So I made a big old Patreon post about it, saying like, you're coming with me for this journey of how the heck I get my Instagram account back. And it was then where, it truly, when panic started to set in, that there was no way to talk to a human at Facebook. It's like, wait. There's no way to talk to a human at Facebook. There's no way to talk to a human at Google, where I have my entire history of email and everything. That's crazy. It was only, luckily, by the nature of my account being large enough, a few people that worked at Facebook noticed and reached out to check, because they have an internal system for, I guess, prioritizing account recovery. And then I also
there's an email address.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know. But and ever
it's
since
internal
then,
only. It only works for if you work there.
I cannot believe that I had to do that. And it's like, first of all, that's unfair that because I had a larger account and had happened to photograph a wedding of somebody who worked for Facebook, that I was able to get this solved within a few days. But it's pretty terrifying. And I cannot tell you the number of photographers since that followed along for my little story when it was occurring have reached out desperately asking me like, hey, can you put me in touch with that person? It's like, no, I can't, because I've had 300 people reach out about this.
Yep.
Because there's a huge amount of phishing scams that most people fall for. I don't think it's all inappropriate violation stuff, but yeah.
Well, hey, great news. You can pay $15 and be able to send someone an email. Get a reply back in a couple of days.
I applied for that and withdrew, actually, a couple days later when I realized, I don't want to pay $15 for this blue check mark. No. Sorry, Tom, I cut you off.
Oh, no, I just was saying that there's a lot of debate, especially in the United States, that it didn't really result in much legislation, towards these networks to try to, hold them accountable for different things and required certain aspects of it. And it is a complicated thing, and I can understand, it seems very straightforward on the surface. But a thing that I would think would be very easy to legislate and very important to do was to require a certain level of customer service for these networks, because they're critically important to so many people at this point in their careers. Instead of the networks charging their members to get basic service, you have to hold a certain, as a company, you need to, if you call up, you have a problem with your sweater, jeans, you call up a company, there's requirements that are mandated by governments to do these things. And I think that would be an area where legislation is almost non-controversial and just would make a ton of sense and improve the lives of everyone using these networks, because they've turned into businesses for so many people. I mean, I'm assuming it drives a ton of your leads, Sam, and business. And Glass doesn't do that now and today and help generate that per se. And that's intentional for now. We'd love to offer more ways to do it without ruining or hurting our community. And that's really important to us. Our community itself is so critical to us. So we think about that pretty carefully. And
Yeah. I mean, today isn't it illegal? Like, if I bought a pair of jeans and it arrived and it only had one leg and the other one was missing, and I had no ability to reach out to anybody at the company to solve this issue at all, that's just straight
There's
up.
a consumer protection agency that exists to help with these things, but there isn't like a social network agency or like there isn't a service there, and so that's one area where I could see collective action being really effective and just basic. We do our best. We're not beholden to anything, though. We can just ignore everybody like running this network, and that it's nice as someone who has to manage all of it. But we don't. We respond, but it's also a much smaller network, right? Like when he reaches certain scales, it is hard to understand problems at scale when you haven't like addressed them. They are very, very different than running a network of a much smaller size. It just becomes.
Yeah, I've had my most personal interaction was actually through Patreon. I think I started mine in 2016. And Patreon as a platform went through one big kind of overhaul. And then ever since then, they went through a rebrand, but the back end and all the tools and experience has basically stayed the same. And there's a lot of constraints with how they do their billing and all this. And it's clear that it's an engineering, it's a problem at every layer at Patreon for them to solve this. But being that they are a platform for creative people, it's in our nature to figure out a creative solution to some billing constraint or some tier constraint or some inability to gift things or promote yourself. So now you get existing long enough that you have all these people on your platform that have creatively figured out how to sidestep all these weird constraints. And now as a company, anytime Patreon, this happens I'm sure to any company, but anytime they try and actually address an issue and fix it, it breaks something for somebody who's like figured out their own way to address the problem. So it's like the longer it goes unaddressed and ignored, the worse it gets. It compounds. It's really, really impossible to think about the unintended consequences of things at scale.
Network design, which is like I heard. I have a couple of friends. The first designer at Facebook is a good friend of mine, and then another person I recruited from the Midwest was great human. Both of them have changed their titles to network designer, which instead of like a product designer, which is what digital products would call it. And I think it's a unique skill set because it's like you're managing so many connections and humans, and then the interfaces you're providing creates very different results. That gets to the article we wrote about appreciations, which is all the unintended consequences of choosing how an action performs in a network is kind of wild, and you just don't know until you try stuff. So we're pretty cautious, and it takes us a little longer to ship stuff because of that, although we try to move very fast, and that's one of the skills that we try to cultivate. But it is something that I'm unwilling to deviate too far from, is to keep that in mind, that focus on the network itself, the network health.
An example of that would be Sam would really love it if we allowed a double tap for appreciations.
Oh yes,
yeah, I really would.
Yeah,
he would really love that.
Or a swipe, and then because right now you swipe in one direction and it goes to the profile, and you swipe in another and it gives a little trust and safety feedback notification button. If I could just swipe and then appreciate, that would be fine too.
Yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm happy to explain some of the decision making around it. I do think, especially in the app, a quicker way to appreciate would be great. On the web, I would be more than willing to explore, because we have a hover interaction to show the information of the photographer. So one of the things that I really wanted to do was cultivate conversation and discussion and those sorts of things. And so there's a detail view. Like Instagram, the feed itself doesn't actually have much of a detail view. You scroll and then you also see the comments or the content right below it. It's a pretty big innovation in terms of speeding things up. And the double tap was also another one of their innovations, if you will. The challenge with Glass is that I want you to see who's taken the photo. I want you to see what they wrote before you mindlessly tap with our double tap. Yep. So that's good. So, but I do think the swipe, and I've gotten this quite often, is that you can swipe either way and you could just quickly appreciate stuff. The issue is that we do the swipe and then you open the detailed view. That's what happens today. I would love that to potentially change to the swipe would then show you the information of the person, and then fully swipe would give you the appreciation. It's just quite a bit of work to undo what we did, and I haven't wanted to prioritize that work because the person who helps us out with the iPhone and iPad app would not be particularly happy with me if we change that interaction. And the other way, which is where it would be quicker and easy to put that action in for you, like the heart or the sparkle, the icon, and the quick appreciation like action, doesn't show you the information of the person. And I don't want to like put it there. So like it's one of those things that we could, but I would love it too. And it's as someone who uses it a lot, it would be quicker. But yeah.
And I will say the thinking through I do feel, because it necessitates punching in and looking at the photo in its own container instead of in the feed with everything else, does make me feel like, okay, if I'm going to appreciate this thing, my appreciation has a little more value. I don't just do this mindlessly, right? Boom, there it is. So it's not.
There's a trade-off to every one of these little interactions. So you spend a fair amount of time. I mean, this is what I spend my time thinking about the most. This is the fun part of my job, so I'm happy to spend as much time as you guys want digging into each one of those little interactions.
I also cannot properly express how terrible double tapping to appreciate felt. It felt so foreign and wrong and like, ugh. I just like, it felt yucky, right? Like it got sent out, we all downloaded it, and we're like, okay, cool, and all of us within like 2 minutes we're like, yeah, no, this ain't it. Like, this is trash.
That's where kind of tying back to my question about where you look for inspiration with maybe companies or apps or social networks that do things right that you like. Excuse me. Sometimes, and I see this a lot, we don't have to get on too much of a tangent about how it relates to photography, but in any creative act or anything that is being experienced, there is a certain magic that comes from actively constraining yourself, like knowing what the cheat code would be to make this slightly better, but is it necessary? And if it's not, and you kind of keep that restraint, it often pays you back in ways that you don't even realize. And so maybe that is one of those interactions where it's sort of it might help boost numbers for new users or something like that, but once people really get it the way that it's currently set up, it actually has a net benefit. I don't know.
We have you are what you measure in a lot of these networks. So the reason we don't have the venture capital and the ad supported network, like we would grow much faster if we were free. We would grow so much faster if you could just download it and use it. But we would require ads to support that model. So that's challenging, but it allows us to do things differently, and that freedom is one of those areas. Like I know what would grow the network faster, which is hard as someone who wants to grow the business and wants to but wants to also be true to the values that we have. Like, I know importing your contact importer and spamming all your friends with things would be very effective at growing our network, but it wouldn't connect you with the right photographers. Yeah. So we have to be slower and like do it more diligently, and that's hard. I know the double tap would be faster and more effective, and like would juice numbers more. I know sending the different styles of notifications would make you feel a little worse, but you would keep you coming back to the app more often. And so there's a fine line there that we have to walk and think about and debate and discuss. It's just having worked on it for a decade, the two different networks. Pinterest and Facebook are very different, but like there's a similar, motivation to keep you engaged, to sell you advertisements, and then of course connect you with your friends and or introduce you to great products you want to buy. In Pinterest case,
what you could do
inspire
to solve some of this issue is jump back to. Do you remember? I think it was the 90s. Maybe it was the early 2000s. There was a product, dial-up internet access, and you could access the internet for free as long as you had ads ever present on your page. What was that called? Was it something with an N? It was definitely not.
I
Netscape.
rember the service, but Net Zero, I think, was
branding. Net Zero, that's it.
I think that was.
Yeah, you had to take like a survey, or you had to do a certain number of ad watching. Yeah, or what you could do is just make people mindlessly fill out CAPTCHA tests and then sell that data to AI self-driving car companies. Apparently, I was shocked when I learned that is what is happening with that CAPTCHA data. Is they're sending it to AI self-driving cars.
That's why
crazy.
you're always clicking bikes, traffic lights,
I know.
stop signs.
Yeah, it makes perfect
sidewalks.
sense. But it's like
they're always going to use it for something if you're human labor. I mean, there are networks that do an incredible job and also offer a free tier that is ad supported. So I don't necessarily say it's always that way. My favorite is Letterboxd. If you're a big movie buff, I'm good friends with the founder there, and he's created an incredible service that has a really good community of people and has able to grow it. It took them. It's 11 years old now, so the product took a while to get to the scale it's at now. But it's really taken off in an incredible way, and I love that service. I'm not a huge movie fan, so I don't use it very often. But I think it's very.
I'm immediately going to go check it out because I love movies, and maybe I've come across it once, but I don't know what it is. So I'm gonna
he's also a really pretty great photographer. Shout out to Matthew. Go to glass.photo/Matthew to see some photos from Letterboxd founder Matthew Buchanan. Love you, Matthew. If he doesn't listen, I'm gonna be hurt that I gave him that little love you.
Yeah, he's in New Zealand. He's in Auckland. Yeah.
One of the wonderful things, though, about from its inception, I think the entire platform app being that you pay for it and you don't have to wrestle with the free ads or whatever, is you also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't too selfish about people staying on Glass for forever or multiple, a certain number of times per day. You actually have the ability to like hyperlink out to things like my own website or something like that in a comment or in the caption. And I love that. It's super valuable. It's always been a pain point and frustration with Instagram. I always feel a little bit gross when I have to say link in bio. It's like, this is worse.
It is a little gross, but there's a reason. Yeah, for spam. It's also spamming. It's both the wanting to keep you there, but to manage spam. Those are the two reasons.
Okay. Well, at least it's slightly more noble than.
No, I
but
think
Facebook
it's also
lets you paste things. They've clearly.
That's.
Spammy. Yeah.
I think it was originally for them to manage spam, and then it's an engagement thing. They know that the numbers will drop if you are able to leave quicker. So that's a pain point of friction. Also, Facebook was founded in an era of Web 2.0-ish stuff, and what I mean by that is a lot of open data and connections, and and Instagram really was an app first product that sort of started to silo your data away from you. There's no way to post to Instagram unless you go to Instagram, right? There's no way to get your photo into it. It's very much more controlled space, and there's strong business reasons to do those things. We try to make Glass as open and not doing that, and because we don't need to, we just we want you to be a happy member. And so when your customer is directly the people who are paying your bills, you focus 100% of your time and effort onto making and building things that they want and have asked for. I'm quite proud of our track record there. Daniel can admit to this, but we had a feature list. We still have a feature list and feedback.glass.photo of things people have requested and asked us for, and we do our best to slowly check each one of those off and give them the things that they're looking for and they want. And yeah, it's great. I'm looking forward to trying to get some of that stuff done.
Yeah, a really wild thing that we've been talking about this for a decade now, but you showed me the first designs when you started working on it in October of 2019. We went to coffee or something because I was living in Amsterdam at the time, and you were like, here's my thing, right? We were going on weekly lunch walks where we would go to lunch, take a walk in a park or something, chat about Glass, and then we would sit at a coffee shop and work on whatever. And so he would pull out his laptop and show me some Glass screens and stuff, and we had a lot of conversations about what we wanted to be in there, right? I very specifically remember the path that we were on in Vondelpark in Amsterdam when I said, we got to have quick appreciations. We got to have something. There needs to be some way to send positive feedback quickly that isn't a comment. right, like we don't have to launch with it, but like it needs to happen at some point, right? Like that sort of level thing. And that was, God, November of 2019, right? And like the beta didn't start until almost a year later, and then didn't launch until August of 2021, right? So like, but the stuff that we talked about and the features that we talked about are now in there, right? Like the stuff that we wanted to launch with, and like Tom was like, this is kind of the feature set, and I was like, oh yeah, shuffle, add 1, 2 things here, drop this, whatever, right? Like the conversations that we had look a lot like what Glass looks like now. And the other things that we wanted that aren't there are the things that are at the top of the list on feedback .glass.photo, right? So like our initial hunch was hunches on what we wanted the product to be able to do were directionally correct. And then when we launched it, the community immediately appeared and helped us organize it on what was best for them, right? Like there have been a few times when it's been like pain points, like categories, right? Like when we launched, we didn't have categories. It was just post photos, find your people, comment away. And so we needed a way to explore Glass, and like that's how categories came to be. But after that, it was like, okay, well now we want to share these wonderful photos outside of Glass. And that was a thing that the community was immediately asking for on day one of like, no, this is great. I love this. Can I share this? And I was like, oh, sure. Here's, so like we reorged the product map, and then suddenly public profiles existed, right? And so like we have the direction that Glass has gone has been community driven, and it's also been where we've wanted to go, which has been awesome, right? There hasn't been, other than like the one random person who asks for video once every like 6 months, we haven't really had any requests that are directionally away from the vision that we've had for it internally, which is like a really wonderful external validation
good
for
signal,
me.
yeah.
Right.
Positive feedback. That's great.
Yeah, that's been good. I would say there's been a few surprises and then more reordering of priorities. And, as you go along, I would caution to like make it seem like we knew all of what it was going to be when we started. Like it evolves over time, but we definitely had strong opinions about where we would hope to take it and where we wanted to build. We're at the phase now of the company where I'm excited to see other people you see it happening in the community where people are really taking their own ownership of like welcoming people into the community and really starting to bring their own communities into Glass, as opposed to that being driven either by myself or mostly by Daniel. We're trying to keep that going, because community building, it's ambitious to try to build a product that's both building a product that like exists, but also the product is a community. So that is a very complicated thing to do at the same time. It is ambitious in a way that's like hard to do.
You guys absolutely, I think, nailed it with the, I don't know what you called the feature or the update, but being able to analyze the lens that was used or the camera body, tap through that on the EXIF data, and then be presented across the entire network of anybody else who's posted a photo from that. Because one of the, and then see that in its own dedicated feed. That is magic. That is gold, and that is how you can build a really amazing community. Because one of the things I've always hated, I had never used the like explore feed on Instagram, because all it gave me was a bubble of other wedding photographers, because I followed wedding photographers and I engaged with wedding photographers. All I'm seeing are wedding photographers, and I'm desperate for that unexpected, oh, this is a street photographer whose work I'm obsessed with. I can learn from and borrow their influence in visual nature and like do something with it. But I never would have thought to find this person by searching for, what their hashtag or subject matter is or what have you. But by the vehicle of searching through camera bodies or lenses, some of these technical aspects in the product, boom, that crossover, like cross-pollination, whatever you want to call it, works, I think, perfectly. And the more you can do things like that, the better.
I can't wait to get some of the things we're working on for Discovery here soon into your hands, because I think you're going to really love the more of that we can offer. I appreciate that you really have enjoyed the interface and where it's going. We have still big holes in the product that I see that we want to get out there over the next bit. There's a lot more stuff you can do from community. You mentioned other products and inspiration. And perhaps it's my age, not super old, but getting up there, where older internet products and things like forums. Not that I love forums, but like the community that can be built around them was quite powerful back in the day. You can even go back to like GeoCities and the communities that formed around them. That was when people were still figuring out what the internet was and how it worked. And like, I don't want to go back to hot pink text on a lime green background as the future of the internet, but like the way in which they shared and communed together is very inspirational for me, and what I would love to see continue to thrive on Glass. And having it be a paid service really has done wonders for some of that community that has been built around it, and I hope that we can continue to foster that and welcome more people in and find ways to give them access. We've been working on programs to give some memberships away for free for like students of photography, if you're a student, so you can come join and be a part of it. And that would be great to see more of that, so we can lower the barrier to entry if the financial cost is a burden. But it's $30 a year. It's not a crazy expense for someone who spends thousands of dollars on camera equipment a year. Like people who are really.
I just spent $30 from my McDonald's to get delivered this morning.
So
Sam,
it's a pretty.
Sam, no. I'm sorry, we're pivoting back to Sam ordering McDonald's.
Can I just mention, I think a great example of this is from my formative years, actually, in terms of like a creative endeavor, was all centered around music, and particularly music production and recording. And there is a site that has stood the test of time somehow. It's now called gearspace.com, but it used to be a different gear.
A very
word.
not accidental. It was just a misogynistic name from back in the day, because that's a thing that happened on the internet.
It's a forum. It's a discussion forum, and it's changed a lot. They have changed a lot about the, especially their homepage, and like clearly tried to monetize in a lot of different ways. But the core experience of going to the subject, posting in a thread, starting a thread and then posting comments to it, has essentially remained unchanged, and it's really stood the test of time in a way that I find surprising. I don't know why exactly, but you're right. Those early forums, once they hit a certain baseline of inoffensive design, apparently not in the names of things, but the visual design, really. There's another one. There's a couple like Mac rumor sites that are also similarly like, wow, they've been using the same forum product for like 20 years. Impressive.
Yeah, you create a community around a particular subject, and I think that's. I had a friend who ended up selling a forum because he had run it. It was like used VW enthusiasts, and like it had been around for decades, and it was still thriving, and there was enough revenue there because of how it worked to keep it going. And I was always surprised by that, and that it could exist. He had built it in like 1996 or something, and then it was like in the early mid 2000s he decided to sell it, and I was just like, there's businesses out there, and they don't need to be huge to be powerful and exciting.
Exactly. And this is a huge benefit of trying to run, I think, such a lean operation, is you don't need it to be so hugely successful. I mean, this is, I think, a perfect example. They had a forum aspect to it, but the DP Review being acquired by Amazon and then shuttered, I guarantee that thing
just like
could make
endlessly.
enough money. That thing could make enough money to, if it was run efficiently and leanly, to have the operators and whatever managing it have a perfectly comfortable life. But Amazon, they don't care. It's nowhere near enough money for them to care as a company. So that's where Yeah, the internet is nicely, like, there's a group of people, it's called DigiCamera, and then there's like an open data project. I hope I'm getting the name right, but they just launched recently as sort of a way to sort of save some of the camera data and all the information around it. And we've reached out. I'd love to, if anyone's listening,
that is part of that project that would want to get in contact with us at Glass, I would love to work with them more, because they have all this incredible camera data and information that's now available openly on the internet, and I don't know how to. We'd like to
find it. Oh, digicamera.com, would that be?
I think it's it. I can open it up on a tab. Like, Daniel, do you know the URL real quick? I'm sorry.
There is a digicamera.com. It looks quite old. Old.
No, this is new and pretty.
Okay.
It's digicamfinder.com. Yeah.
Okay.
digicamfinder.com. And this is they're like, as Amazon announced the shutdown of DP Review, the photo community freaked out and set out to save the data, and then this happened. And so it's this
amazing,
really interesting resource that I'm excited about. And the thing that I feel like is missing in the connection to it, and we've started to do this, is you could see the photos taken with that camera, and we have that information. So I'd love to find a way to work together and connect those things up in a way that would be really great. And so you could see the camera data on Glass, and we could offer some of the photo, or there's a way to do that, or to connect in some way, obviously with people that would feel comfortable sharing their photos more publicly. If you've made your photos public with your public profile, those sorts of things.
By virtue, Tom and I are two of the biggest users of Glass, and I, up until this week, have successfully avoided buying a camera because of a camera feed on Glass.
I think I know where you're going with this.
It finally happened. I finally bought a Canon PowerShot G2 for $60 on eBay because Sam kept posting 4 megapixel photos with it.
Here's the thing. Here's what's amazing, and this has clearly been demonstrated in a more obvious way through analog film cameras having a big resurgence because of the nostalgic nature of film and everything. The same thing appears to be happening with old digital cameras, and it's so fascinating to think about this period of time where high enough quality sensors existing in digital cameras never got really edited or manipulated like the final files through modern tools like Lightroom. The G2 was released, I think, in 2002. So it was like 5 years before Lightroom. I guarantee the vast majority of people that owned one of those had moved on to another camera by the time Lightroom came out. So there's this weird visual opportunity to now take these vintage sensors and edit them with modern tools and get a look that it's really, some of it's the lens quality in that camera is really distinct and kind of amazing, but it's also the colors, and you're just like, you can't quite put your finger on why it looks different, but you feel it, and it's because it's a shift in so many different layers. It's possible to measure, but there's like a ripe opportunity for that to play out. I guess I first became aware of this as a thing by maybe it was talking to you, Daniel. I don't know. The iPhone 3G images.
The TikTok teens are buying iPhone 3Gs on eBay so they can get the dreamy look of the 2 megapixel camera.
But it's much more interesting when you have a RAW file to play with, which obviously Apple didn't create in their phones for many years later. But yeah, Canon and I haven't played around with any old Nikon cameras, but having access, there's so many old, cheap cameras like this, and having a big database essentially to kind of skim through takes a lot of the, because I only want to buy, so many like $60, $100 cameras to play around with. It's like, geez.
But yeah, we keep wanting to, Stefan deserves so much credit for building the infrastructure around that, and it's a big reason why it can exist in the way it does, and we have to be so diligent with keeping the quality high, and so we're kind of obsessive about that because metadata is a very messy format. EXIF data in particular is just not clean, and so having to manage that is really tricky, and so he built a really nice system in order to make that work, and we invested time into it. Whereas this was one of my favorite features of Flickr back in the day, and so it was one of those that it's not well maintained there, at least from what I can tell, and I think that might be because it's just not a focus anymore, and that's would make sense for it's not we think it's valuable and worth doing. We members want it. Totally. We get so much wanting of editing EXIF data when you upload or you can manipulate it. It's a feature we've wanted to add for a very long time. It's just quite challenging to do from an interface and like the way the data is managed perspective. So it's on the list, but it would be great for film photographers and like getting all the because otherwise you have to use tools. And we have an article like an FAQ for how to do it yourself manually if you want, but that's not going to get wide enough adoption. And so we need to build it into the upload interface. But
yeah, with like drop downs or something where it's like a preset number of things you have recognized and know exist in the system, and then as the end user you just have to hope that you've cataloged whatever that obscure camera or film stock is.
And then, like all of the work that goes into designing and building that, because that's a big engineering lift. And so then it's like, okay, are we prioritizing that, or are we prioritizing, improving our search?
Just ask
or are we going to
ChatGPT to dump the code. This is what I need in code. Just get it done. Everyone is.
Oh man,
Sam, we're hanging out.
I had to bring it up once.
Soon. You can't say that shit to me in person.
I won't. I promise. I'm totally different in person. I drove by your house yesterday, by the way, Daniel.
You drove by my house and you didn't say hi?
I couldn't. I was going to be late to a session, but I photographed within walking distance of your home. It would have been awkward for me to.
I do want to
take my clients to your home. Sorry.
Since we're talking about houses, is Sam in an A-frame right now? Like, what is happening? Like, okay.
This is my living room.
For those of you that who are listening instead of watching on Sam's YouTube channel, youtube.samheardphotography. .com/samheardphotography. There we go. I know how to say a URL structure. I've been on the internet for 20 years. No big deal. Sam's sitting in a loft in an A-frame because he owns the only A-frame in Maryland.
Yeah, that's not in the mountains. I'm fairly convinced of that, yes. Yeah, it's an odd piece of architecture for the Baltimore area, that's for sure.
I was very confused by it. I'm a huge, I have when I worked at Pinterest for 5 years, I had a whole massive board full of A-frames. So I love the architectural style. It's very fun.
The whole house is one level aside from this loft, which was this raised up part. It's a very small little section, but I bought it from an older retired couple, and they couldn't manage stairs so well, so they actually totally abandoned this part. And so I actually had a local Baltimore artisan, furniture maker, build a set of stairs to reclaim access to this, and it's quite a handy background for any type of filming.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really nice. Yeah, it works well. It's the first time I've been on a call and been like, wow, look at that architecture. And I live in Amsterdam. I'm like, wow, that's really cool architecture. I look outside and I've got this beautiful Amsterdam streets.
I really leaned into it in the IGTV days when Instagram launched that. I was like, okay, I missed the whole YouTube thing. I'm just going to full throttle IGTV vertical, really lean into this A-frame thing.
That makes sense.
I did not have viral success, but it was probably kind of effective for a little while. I think most people assume it's just a fake background, but I need to have every video where I walk up the steps and physically enter the space so that people.
There you go.
It does look pretty surreal.
100% look like I'm at a senior portrait.
Yeah.
Posing as a 8th grader. You're gonna love that, everyone who's watching. Those of you who are listening, great job too. Endless Appreciations, it's available wherever you listen to podcasts. And thanks for joining us today, Tom. We've run a little long, so we're gonna wrap it up.
Our very first guest person. This is amazing. Thank you for doing it.
It was great to be with you guys. I had a great time, and thanks so much.
Okay, we have yet to figure out the elegant exit of these episodes.
No, we got it. No, it's the I appreciate you. That's the one. And then or cue the intro. You're supposed to then cut into the clap where it's like.
I will.
So there you go. That was your moment.